All right. Welcome, everybody, to our year-end episode of Book Drops. We are happy to have you aboard. We're very excited to be talking about some year-end books and things like that today, but we hope you had a good holiday over Thanksgiving, nice and safe. Today, we are going to be talking about some best of lists and some notable books and things like that.
Some of our just personal
Some
ones
of our
that we
personal
like
favorites
aren't on any list.
We were talking before the episode and basically talking about the very subjective nature of all these year-end best of lists. There's no way that you can fit on everything that has been published in the last year. And if you start looking at all the genres and all the other sort of, components that you have to the publishing industry, it's just, there's no way you can cover everything. Something's always going to be left off. So if you do happen to have a favorite book that was published in the last year, we highly encourage you to share it on the comments. And we are, I was doing some research before we started today, and so they just as an example of the amount of stuff that's out there. If you type in bestsellers 2021 on Amazon, on Amazon, you get over 30,000 results. So there's 30,000, not helpful at all. There was a list of the bestsellers week by week. You can get that on some of the statistical websites and things like that. Just for example, just the random sort of things that for the week ending November 8th of 2021, the best-selling books in the United States were the number 16 and the Wimpy Kid. That was number one with over 211,000 books sold just in that week. But then you have a recipe book. You have Half Homemade, Fully Delicious by David Venable. You have a John Grisham book, The Judge's List, which came out, which sold over 54,000 copies just in that 1 week. You have The Lee Child, Better Off Dead. The Pioneer Woman Cookbook was on there too. So it's just, and Dune was one of the best-selling books of the week of November 8th, 2021. So it's like
looking at top lists doesn't always help.
Doesn't always help.
I think for me, it helps to follow people that I know read the same things as I do. And I think this year I got 90% of my recommended reading from people I know that read the same thing as me. Exactly. And then when they say, you have to read this, I'm like adding it to my Libby.
Exactly. I think word of mouth is one of the best ways you can get, because everybody's best of list is basically just there. It's like, I like this one. So it's, if you've talked to other people that like to read, that's as valid of a list as I can think. So feel free to create your own best of list at the end of the year is basically what we're saying. So that's one way to definitely do that. Another thing you might want to do too is consider, if you do like a particular genre, look at the people that are up nominated for the awards, especially for the individual genres, like the Locus Award, the Eisner Awards, the Hugos, the Romance Awards. What is that? They're calling it the Vivian now. The Vivian. So look at the nominees for the Vivian for 2021. And if you really do like those genres, then that's a way to really narrow your focus, because we were discussing too that you don't see a lot of genre books that are on those, best of notable books lists at the end of the year. It's always very literary fiction and things like that. So if you do enjoy, and there is nothing wrong. I think for one thing, these podcasts, we've said there's nothing wrong with anybody's reading taste at all.
Mystery, sci-fi, romance, whatever you read is awesome, whether you listen or.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I will actually be talking about a couple of audiobooks that I just highly recommend from this year that if people say that audiobooks aren't books, I think we've squashed that one too during these episodes as well. So, okay. So so look at your award winner nominees. That's always fun to look through. Even on cleveland.com, if you're in the Northeast Ohio area, there are some great books from Northeast Ohio authors this past year. And I know we are not going to mention all of your favorite books. No. Maybe none of your favorite books will be mentioned on this episode. But
find some you haven't read.
Find some and we wanted to call your attention to some that we've enjoyed, and just things that should be on your radar. And so I am going to hand it off to Sarah.
Well, we added lists on our shared document, and one of them was Cleveland.com had a list of local authors and their newest releases, and there were 3 that I didn't know about. And they were all cozy mystery authors. So I thought I'm just going to group them together and talk about them, because they're just all just adorable and I can't get over it, and that I didn't know about them. So, and you'll appreciate this, A Game of Cones is, by author Abby Collette. And it's set in a family-run ice cream shop. and there's a murder, and we need to figure it out. So, I mean, what more
As you'll
could you
have
ask?
in a neighborhood ice cream shop. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to check. It's this is actually the third one. A Deadly Inside Scoop is coming out in January. So there's 3 in this series.
Yeah.
Second
And
one,
I will say real quick that we did interview Abby Collette, whose real name is Abby Vandiver, on the Ohio Center for the Book.org. We have a nice interview with her from the National Novel Writing Month events that we had this past month. So we have a nice write-up for some writing tips and stuff that she has. So if you're an aspiring writer, check out Ohio Center for the Book.org as well.
Another cozy one is Al Dente's Inferno. Really good. Stephanie Cole, you can see on there. So this is set in Tuscany, and it's a chef who wants to start like a farm to table, like chef school in Tuscany, and moves there. And guess what? There's a murder.
A murder.
I know. So, and there's number 3, and there's 3 in this series right now too. And third cozy mystery series, if you haven't seen, this one has 7 in the series, and it's called Fatal Fried Rice by Vivian Chen. I love this cover. So this is set in a Chinese restaurant in Cleveland. So I like the whole little family business angle for a lot of these. So I just wanted to highlight those because they were new to me.
That's cool. I do think it's fun to read books that are set in a particular location that you're aware of too, because you really get to have fun of like spot the location whenever you're reading that kind of stuff.
Right.
I will start out with a book that I have actually mentioned before on this podcast that I think everybody should be aware of. And I'm just bringing up the cover on my book since I am here. There we go. So this is
It's reading it.
Oh, stop. Where's that coming from? It's an audiobook. So The Bomber Mafia by Malcolm Gladwell. As far as I'm concerned, this book has basically changed the audiobook medium forever. He had basically turned this book into a podcast. Each chapter would be like an episode. He did do a truncated version of this on his his podcast, and it's going to come to me. It's something history, and I can't believe I didn't write that down. But anyway, Malcolm Gladwell's podcast. He actually did a short version of this and talked about this in about like 3 or 4 episodes, I think it was. But what he's done is taken that story and just expanded it into book form. It's also available as a print book, which I think is an interesting way to look at it as well, because what he's done is he's taken interviews with people from World War II, and they've talked about the bombing raids and how the whole idea of, bombing campaigns started, and napalm and all these just, the whole background story of all these events in World War II. And he's talked about, of course, in the book, excerpts from interviews and things like that. But what's cool about the audiobook is he's actually taken the actual audio interviews with these guys, the recordings, and put the excerpts into the book itself. So you hear them in their own words. And so and there's sound effects, and there's the whole night. It's completely produced.
It's like Band of Brothers where they talk to the guys.
Exactly.
It adds so much to it.
Exactly. So you really get a sense of what these people really like. And so as far as I'm concerned, this book has sort of raised the bar for all of the audiobooks that are going to come after it too. So keep an eye on this one.
Ooh, and I'm going to jump in. We got a comment. Can you name the book series set in Cleveland again? So I did 3. So just really quick, I'll say the authors, Vivian Chen, Chien, Stephanie Cole, those are set in Tuscany, and then Abby Collette.
Who also writes under Abby Vandiver.
Yes. So I went through, I didn't read a lot of mysteries this year, but I wanted to see, what was on all the lists. And this one won the Edgar and the Mystery Writers of America. Wow. So Gin Patrol on the Purple Line by Deepa and Parra. See the cover there. So this one, it's about a 9-year-old. He lives in a really big city in India, and it says he watches too many police shows, and like reality police shows. And a classmate goes missing. He gets 2 of his friends to help try and search, and uses all the things he learns from his shows. And then it kind of like turns when more children from the area start to go missing. So it becomes kind of dangerous. And so it sounds really interesting and won a lot of awards this year. So
that's great. That's great. That's one thing you will see us pull up some things on our iPads and our phones, because we like things that are still checked out from the library, so we could get the actual physical copies to share the cover with all of you. So that's one of the things that just to keep in mind, that we have the ebooks, and we have the audio books, and we have the physical books, and all that sort of options for you to read at your whatever device or whatever medium you would like to try. So That's always good. I am going to take a little bit more of another tack here. So this is actually a nonfiction graphic novel. This is Wake: The Hidden History of a Women-Led Slave Results by Dr. Rebecca Hall and illustrated by Hugo Martinez. I picked this one up. It was on a couple of the lists that I'd seen, and it sort of went under my radar. But I think that the thing that got me is I picked it up from the shelf and I started to read it, and I literally went through the whole first chapter before I put it down. It's a fascinating look at the historical research that Dr. Hall has done, and she does a great job of going through just the labors of trying to do research on these kinds of things, because of course the records are sparse. Sometimes they've been lost. You follow a trail so far and it just fades away. And some of the archives that she tried to visit, they would be, we don't have anything on slavery or anything, maybe abolition, but none of this. And she would say, I'm looking for records from the 1700s, and no, we don't have any of those. And it was just, you could sense her frustration as she went through these things and tried to recreate the stories of these women. And she said it's even harder to find the records of the women-led slave revolts than some of the others. But she does a nice job wrapping the book up too with sort of a historical fiction setting of how a couple women who ended up on a ship led a revolt on that ship, and the backstory that she's reconstructed that sort of led up to them being there and how they got there. So it's a really fascinating look. If you like nonfiction graphic novels, this is a good way to go. If you are interested in history, this is also another good way to go. And it's a fascinating look at that period of history.
Nice. This is one of my picks for 2021. Beverly Jenkins, Wild Rain. And this is one, and actually someone was talking about what romances have you read where the woman is the dominant figure. And in this one, she definitely is. Her name is Spring. And this is kind of an offshoot of one of her other series. So it's nice because all the characters kind of show up in other books. It is fantastic. She is a rancher in Montana, owns her own ranch, and a newspaper man comes to town to write about the town doctor. And of course, he's not prepared for winters in Montana, so she rescues him. It's a really sweet book. It's just the relationship is a little different and lovely, and I am so impressed. I hadn't read Beverly Jenkins before, I think last year, and I love every book I read. And I heard her on a podcast. She's so interesting. She worked at the library at the University of Michigan when she started writing romances. So I like that.
Very cool.
So yeah, please check her out if you haven't. There's such great historical romances.
Oh, that's excellent. I am going to put in one more plug for the audiobook that I think I have talked about since our very first episode. If you haven't listened to it, it's time. And that's 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. That came out. That was actually published in January, so it's been a while. I've mentioned it a couple times on this I call it a podcast, on our show here, whatever. And it is just a masterful performance. She is, I mentioned before, a stand-up comedian. She knows how to deliver lines, but it is dramatic. It is poignant. She does a great job. And to refresh everybody's memory, it is a retelling of the Iliad and the Battle of Troy, and from the perspective of all the women characters involved, including a couple of the goddesses that are involved. And it is just an amazing, eye-opening read to give you a whole different perspective on something that has been around for several thousand years. It is a nice, fresh perspective, and I have been recommending it to everybody that I can. I actually have one of my friends down near Columbus reading it right now. So
I know I was trying to count because I had talked about Wild Room before. I'm like, how many times did I talk about it as an audiobook and then again for best romance and then again? So you know it's good if you're mentioning it multiple times that you need to read it.
Exactly.
I have a sci-fi pick next, which I also talked about one of our earliest shows, I think. It's Andy Weir, Project Hail Mary. All right, there's a little glare there. So this is the author of The Martian, if people aren't familiar. And it just has that same aspect. If you've read or watched The Martian with Matt Damon, he is fighting for survival. And it's so hard to talk about without ruining anything. Pretty much he wakes up and he's in like a sterile room and there's like robot arms and they're taking care of him. And he's like been in stasis and something went wrong and he's the only one left. And it just goes from there. And pretty much I read this in 2-3 days. It's so good. And if you read it, reach out to me because there's such great things that happen in this book, but I can't spoil any of them. So.
I believe this is the one where you also used science as a verb. Yes, to
science it out. Yeah, you're going to die if you can't figure out, physics equations. I love I'm glad it's not me stuck in space.
Anytime you can use science as a verb, that's awesome. One book that is, I don't know whether it's on very many best of lists or whatever, but I found it highly enjoyable if you enjoy the vicissitudes of language and having fun, just things about grammar and all that. This is Highly Irregular: Why Tough, Through, and Do Don't Rhyme and Other Oddities of the English Languages by Erica Ockrent. And there we go. And illustrated by Sean. He has a lot of fun little illustrations in there. So this is just basically, she walks you through some of those weird things, exactly why, tough, through, and do don't rhyme. Some other things about the exception proves the rule, why that is actually why we say that. It's a lot of fun. It is very lighthearted. It's an easy read. It's nice and breezy. She has written several other books that I highly recommend, and she writes regularly for a bunch of journals and newspaper articles and things like that. So she has gotten multiple accolades for those. Her first book was In the Land of Invented Languages, which I recommend and which I will give you a teaser of that I actually show up in. So it's a lot of fun. If you enjoy books about language, this was published in 2021. Highly recommend you picking it up. It's a lot of fun.
I've got one that a lot of people read this year, and I just missed it. And then I think it's one that is hard to kind of put into a genre. I saw it on the World Fantasy Award nominee list, but I think it could be mystery. I think it could be literary. And it's Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And pretty much it says she receives a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin begging for someone to save her from a mysterious doom. She heads to a distant house in the Mexican countryside. She's not sure what she'll find. Her cousin's husband, a handsome Englishman, is a stranger, and she knows little about the region. And then skipping over, they begin to invade Noemi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. So a little spooky, a little supernatural, I think. So
blood and doom, not two things you really want to go together.
Not dreaming about that. So
very cool.
I really want to read this one. So
excellent. And that is, well, I will say that the ones that we are bringing up today too, some of them we've read, some of them we are on our to read list. There's only so many hours in the day. So
and I just hit on Goodreads yesterday. I hit my 100 for the year, and I still haven't read everything I wanted to. So
that'll give you about 1/10% of everything that's published there.
Don't feel bad if you can't get to everything you want to read.
I would like to actually ask you about any number of people keep extolling the virtues of Goodreads. Could you talk about how you use it, how you utilize it?
The good thing to me, actually, the thing I like, it's nice to keep track of what you've read, especially like 10, did I read this? Some things like that where you can't, if you've read for 10 or 20 years, you can go back and check. So that's great. The other thing I have now is I have a list of like DNFs, like could not finish books. So it's like, for whatever reason, I started, just not my thing, I didn't like this part of it. Usually I give it, a few chapters. And if it's not for me, I don't want to pick this up in another year because everyone's reading this and go, oh, I hated this. This guy was a jerk. So that's the best thing about it. So I have like a red shelf, a Tubi red shelf, and then one that, nope, these are just not for me, which is great because sometimes you kind of forget.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't explored Goodreads, it's just Google Goodreads. It's the easiest way to do. Is it goodreads.org?
I think it's com.
And which is actually owned by
Amazon
now. So that's twice we've mentioned them in the same episode. But they were independent before they were actually bought by Amazon.
They were bought, yeah, and it's all tied in. Like when I check out a book, like from Libby, or if you buy a book on Amazon, it'll automatically say on Goodreads. If you want it to, it'll say I'm currently reading this book.
There you go. There you are. There good read there.
Goodreads.com.
Thank you, Cleveland Public Library.
So there's good and
So it is. So if you aren't involved with Goodreads, but you are a big reader, highly recommend checking it out. I have any number of staff members and friends that have just extolled the virtues. I keep meaning to do it myself, but I don't know whether I want to tell people that I don't read as much as I should. So it's one of those sort of public
keep
things.
It private.
Oh, that's true.
You
can just use it for yourself then.
Yep,
so.
I just use it. Yeah.
I do want to bring up some poetry. There are so many books of poetry and Ohio poets especially that have had books this season. We have a number of notable poets throughout the state. I just wanted to basically call your attention to one just so that we can whet your appetite maybe to explore that medium a little bit more, that genre a little bit more. So this is Clean Coal Burn by Kip Knott. I had the pleasure of speaking with him during an Ohioana book festival event last year, the year before. Great guy, great poet. The nice thing about his poems is that they really evoke Ohio, the Midwest. It's that whole sort of you really get a sense of the land and the people of Ohio with these poems too. It's not like you have to. There's a lot of deep structure to them and a lot of hidden meaning and things like that. Mm-hmm. But they can also be approached at a very basic understandable level too. So they're not you don't have to be afraid of them. If you are looking for a way to get into poetry, I think that Kip is a great author for that sort of thing, and I highly recommend checking this out. So.
I've got another one that I've read, and I read all 3 books in the series this year. Trying to get it without a glare. So this is the 3rd in the series, Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. It's about 3 different sisters, the Brown sisters. It's set in England. They're like kind of rom-com, so they're still kind of steamy if you like that, but funny, like everything you would want out of like a rom-com book if you like that. The best thing about hers, the representation in them, actually, he has autism in this book and is kind of particular. And I was reading some things before this just to talk about it, and they were saying it's not looked at as something like that takes away from him. It's kind of part of who he is, and he has these quirks, and it's not. It's not like the only thing about him that so that it's really well done. So I enjoyed all 3 of these. They're just fantastic. And I think I did these on audio too. Really great audiobooks.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Speaking of audiobooks, I tried to read the next book on audio, or tried to listen to the book on audio, but that is not the way to listen to it. Let me bring this up here real quick. So this is actually, we're building suspense. That's what we're doing. So Rationality by Steven Pinker. The person who does the audiobook, they do a good job. The problem with Steven Pinker's books is that there are a lot of graphs and charts, and he's referring to statistics and equations and things like that. So trying to keep track of those while driving down the highway is not the easiest thing to do. But I'm a fan of Steven Pinker's, and I wanted to pick it up, and this was the only one that was available. The audiobook was the only one that was available whenever I first tried to listen to it. But it's a great book, especially I think in our current situation, social situation, because he talks about, biases and, approaching things from a truth-based perspective and how to sort of reason through and different fallacies and that sort of thing. I think that he does a great job in sort of extolling the virtues of that mindset. And he's done a lot of interesting books in the past. And if you are a person who, there are some other ones that are fit this genre, like a few years ago, Thinking Fast and Slow was a big title for a while. It covers some of the same ground, but Steven Pinker always has a very interesting sort of perspective on all these sorts of things from himself. And he also talks about sort of the reasons why we find ourselves in some sticky situations in our current social and political situations right now in the final chapter. So it's a good book to pick up for just a refresher on approaching things from that skeptical, be aware of your biases mindset, and also sort of a current events as well. So highly recommend this one.
Nice.
But get it in print.
The Hugo Awards are being announced next week, so they just have the list of the finalists. So this is on it, and I haven't read this one, but I've read some in this series, which is the Murderbot, affectionately called the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. This is the first full-length Murderbot book, which is called Network Effect, but they're really short. I think I did the audio, and they were like 3 or 4 hours. They were really short and really fun. I can't do it justice, but I have a little blurb. That feeling when you're at work and you've had enough of people, and then the boss walks in with yet another job that needs to be done this second or the world will end, but all you want to do is go home and binge your favorite shows. He likes TV shows. And you're a sentient murder machine programmed for destruction. Congratulations, you're a murder bot. So that gives you any indication. He works with a bunch of humans and kind of like he has to like save the humans, and he like reluctantly does
humans.
I know, come on. So it's a great series. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That one's there's another one on my list there.
Add it to Goodreads.
So here is one. This one has gotten some mixed reviews. I read some mixed reviews on it. I found it kind of fun, but also a little, thought-provoking. So this is Cyclopedia Exotica by Amindar Dalawal. She is a Canadian comics artist, and this is so there's the graphic novel comics. I prefer comics. Some people prefer graphic novels. We've been through that whole thing before. But what it does is uses Cyclops to, as if they were members of our society, and uses them as some satire and some social commentary and things like that. You have some Cyclops who have an operation to be two-eyed because they don't want to be one-eyed anymore. There's various dating problems that come up in here and this kind of thing. But it's done. I think it's done very cleverly. Like I said, there's been some mixed reviews where some people have been like, well, the simile between some minorities and some people who don't get the exposure in society that they deserve. They're not sure if the similes and the metaphors are ring quite true. But overall, it's gotten some very positive reviews. I enjoyed it myself. I think that it is like I said, some clever writing and some very, very enjoyable drawing. And it actually ends with a pseudo children's book at the end that one of the people in the book is remembering from their childhood as well. So that's kind of interesting. But Cyclopedia Exotica, so check that one out as well.
All right. I'm going to sneak one more in, which is the holidays are coming up. And if you're have a lot going on or have a little bit of downtime, this is the perfect book. It's so much fun. And I just loved it. It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. So kind of the premise is, if you watch Schitt's Creek, this is the daughter Alexa, pretty much modeled on the daughter Alexa, kind of just spoiled, kind of known for her looks and not much else. She kind of royally messes up. The family kind of kicks her out and says she needs to get some real world experience. So she takes over a bar that was her father's, Pacific Northwest. And there's a burly fisherman who's grumpy, and you can see where this goes. But I was so surprised. It's funny, it's sweet, it's like everything you would want out of a romance. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of another Book Drops episode, and our year end is like right here. So this is it. We want to thank you for joining us over the past year for our episodes of Book Drops, and we hope you enjoyed some of the selections that we've offered to you. And we look forward to talking to you again in the coming year.
And we have guest hosts next year.
And we have guest hosts next year coming, so that's going to be very exciting. And we'll be looking at a bunch of different genres and new books and new medium and new film and TV and all kinds of stuff. So please join us in 2022. And we wish you the best of happy holidays and a happy new year. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
I think the sequel with her sister.